Isaac Newton didn't just study the world, he redefined it. Every time you drop a pen, drive a car, or look at the stars, you're witnessing the invisible laws he uncovered. But behind those discoveries was not just a genius. It was a man obsessed, isolated, and haunted by the need to make sense of everything. Newton was born on January the 4th, 1643 in Woolsthorpe, England, a fragile baby born so early that no one expected him to survive the night. His father had died before he was even born, and when his mother remarried, she left young Isaac behind to be raised by his grandmother. That wound, that early abandonment, shaped him. Newton grew up quiet, withdrawn, often lost in his own world. But that solitude became fertile ground for his imagination. He didn't have many friends. Instead, he had ideas and questions. As a teenager, Newton wasn't an exceptional student at first. But when someone mocked him, it ignited a fire in him. He started working harder, not for grades, but for revenge. That competitive streak would follow him his entire life. When he entered Trinity College, Cambridge, he began studying mathematics and philosophy. It was the mid-1600s, a time when Europe was still clinging to Aristotle's ancient ideas about the universe. But a few daring minds, like Galileo and Kepler, had begun breaking those chains. Newton read their works and something clicked. He started asking questions no one could yet answer. Then came the Great Plague of 1665. The university closed and Newton returned home to his family farm, but instead of wasting time, he isolated himself. Again. And in that isolation, the world changed. In just 2 years, Newton developed the core of what would become modern science. He began formulating calculus, the mathematical language of motion and change. He studied light with a homemade prism, discovering that white light could be split into a spectrum of colors. And then, one afternoon, as he watched an apple fall from a tree, he asked the question that would make him immortal. If the apple falls, does the moon fall too? He realized that gravity wasn't just a force on Earth, it was universal. The same invisible pull that drew the apple downward was what kept the planets in orbit around the sun. Gravity wasn't just a local mystery, it was a cosmic law. For 20 years he refined this idea in secret, barely telling anyone. He didn't publish, he didn't boast. He calculated, tested, and guarded his work like treasure. Newton was paranoid about being criticized, and with good reason. He had rivals everywhere, especially Robert Hooke, who constantly challenged him. But in 1687, after encouragement from astronomer Edmund Halley, Newton finally released his masterpiece, Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica. It was the most important scientific book ever written. Inside were his 3 laws of motion, the foundations of physics, and the law of universal gravitation, describing how every object in the universe attracts every other object. From the movement of tides to the fall of a cannonball, Newton could now explain it all with elegant mathematical precision. He gave the universe order. He made it predictable. For the first time, humanity could understand the mechanics of the cosmos. But Newton wasn't done. He dove into optics, proving that color is not a property of objects but of light itself. He designed the first reflecting telescope, eliminating the distortions of earlier lenses and allowing astronomers to see the stars with unprecedented clarity. He even invented calculus, independently of the German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, though their feud over who invented it first would turn into one of the ugliest intellectual battles in history. Newton, being fiercely territorial, used his position as president of the Royal Society to destroy Leibniz's reputation. It was one of the darker sides of his genius, the obsession with control, with credit, with being the absolute authority. Yet Newton wasn't just a scientist, he was also a theologian and an alchemist. spending decades writing more about religion and alchemy than about physics. He tried to decode hidden messages in the Bible, searching for divine patterns in history. He experimented with metals, chemicals, and symbols, convinced that nature's secrets were reflections of God's mind. To Newton, science wasn't separate from faith. He believed that by uncovering the laws of nature, he was reading the mind of God himself. In his later years, Newton became wealthy and respected, Master of the Mint, knighted by Queen Anne, and celebrated as one of the greatest minds alive. But privately, he remained restless. He lived alone, never married, and was prone to mental breakdowns. He quarreled with nearly everyone who dared question him. For all his brilliance, he was also human, insecure, proud, and painfully isolated. Newton died in 1727 at the age of 84. He was buried in Westminster Abbey among kings and poets, a fitting resting place for the man who ruled over the universe of thought. His legacy didn't just shape science, it shaped reality itself. He taught us that the world runs on principles, that chaos can be measured, predicted, and understood. The modern world, from engineering to astronomy, from rockets to AI, all traces its logic back to the world Newton built. Even Einstein, who later expanded our understanding of space and time, stood in awe of him, saying, "Newton saw what no one had seen before, and few ever will again." Today, more than 300 years later, we still live in Newton's universe. A universe where every motion has a cause, every object has a pull, and every mystery invites a question. Because in the end, Isaac Newton's greatest discovery wasn't gravity. It was the idea that the world, no matter how vast or complex, could be understood. And that perhaps is the most powerful force of all.